Good afternoon, everyone. The introductions have already been done, so I won't take much of your time. Just to indicate that I'm presenting to you from Zambia, and Zambia is a landlocked country. We are part of the SADC and COMESA region with a population of 18 million people. Surrounded with 8 countries. So we just really have to be very friendly. Otherwise, our qualifications are not going to go anywhere. So basically, we are surrounded with all those countries, as you can see on the screen. And we're based in Lusaka, which is the administrative and economic capital of Zambia. We basically have an education system that is looking at 3 main sectors: the general education that covers early childhood, primary and secondary education. Then we have the TVET, which looks at skills development, and the higher education, which is basically university. The Qualifications Authority was established in 2011 by an act of parliament. But really operations, we started in 2014. So one can see that the intention is there, but sometimes the actualization takes quite a bit of time. But what the act did was to establish a qualifications authority, which is governed by a board under the Ministry of Higher Education. And our function is to implement and maintain the qualifications framework, ensure that qualifications are registered and accredited on the framework, and validate qualifications. Over and above that is to ensure that our standards and registered qualifications are internationally comparable. We also maintain a database of learner achievement records. We do have quite a lot of functions, like you are aware of when you are dealing with issues to do with regulatory authorities. You have like 15 responsibilities. So to sum it all, really it's what I've basically given. And the National Qualifications Framework, which the Zambia Qualifications Authority is responsible for, was finally developed and agreed in 2016. And it comprehensively covers all learning achievements and pathways. And it is a 10-level qualifications framework made up of a system that comprises the general education, which is one I mentioned to you, the trades and occupations, as well as the higher education sub-framework. So these sub-frameworks basically all work together to ensure that the objectives of the Zambia Qualifications Framework are attained, which is really the objectives of integration, access and mobility, as well as progression and quality, as well as ultimately employment, promoting education, training and employment opportunities. So we see that with the qualifications framework, we've been able to have a national framework for learning achievement that different sectors of the economy can actually speak to, and that people are able to move within and across the framework. You will see that on the screen, I have shared with you the structure of the current qualifications framework, and I do mention current because we're in a review process, and we will share what the thoughts are to that. But currently what we have are 10 levels, as you can see on the screen. And we have from level 1, the primary education certificate, all the way to a doctorate certificate. To coordinate all this is the Qualifications Authority, and the Qualifications Authority is supported by what we have termed as appropriate authorities. These appropriate authorities are quality assurance bodies that are established of Parliament. So, and so these are varied, and I like to just stress this. So under appropriate authorities, you see that there's a varied representation there, not just the typical quality assurance bodies currently. So these are some of the areas that I'll speak to a little bit later on. So this is how our qualifications framework looks like, covering the 3 sub-frameworks: the general education, the trades and occupations sub-framework, and the higher education sub-framework, with the qualifications that are really represented. I'm really highlighting in view of the time allocation that's there, so that we can just have an appreciation. So what we have behind those qualification levels are that each qualification each level has a level descriptor, which is described by a statement of learning achievements known as a level descriptor. The level descriptor basically provides a generic indication of the learning achievements or outcomes that an appropriate qualification at that level is anticipated to have. And these are basically they describe the learning outcomes in terms of the foundational competences, or what we normally call the knowledge, the practical skills, and that which somebody can with reflex do, or the applied knowledge, which basically is looking at your autonomy and responsibility and ability to do on reflex the skills that one has acquired. To the level descriptors, to ensure that really what we are doing as the Qualifications Authority, we coordinate the outputs from the appropriate authorities. Recall I did mention that the quality assurance is managed by the appropriate authorities. So as the Qualifications Authority, we then coordinate the outputs of the appropriate authorities that are responsible for the 3 sub-frameworks of the ZQF. The appropriate authorities in this case will include the Higher Education Authority, the Technical Education, Vocational Entrepreneurship Training Authority, the Examinations Council of Zambia, and interestingly enough, it also includes training institutions and some professional bodies. And really that's where the discussions started for us to review. But before I go into the review, I just want to show you the roles currently as defined by our Act of Parliament of what these appropriate authorities do. They are basically responsible for managing their own sub-frameworks, the quality assurance for the sub-frameworks. They develop and implement criteria with regard to qualifications in consultation with the Qualifications Authority, so that everything is well coordinated and things are not happening, outside the framework. They also recommend qualifications or part qualifications for accreditation or registration on the qualifications framework. And they also ensure that the level descriptors are adhered to. So basically, they're the quality assurance arm of the qualifications framework, and they do recommend. What this basically means is that no qualifications will be recognized on the NQF without the recommendation or without being presented by those that are recognized as appropriate authorities. So they play a key role on the qualifications framework. So the issue with the review of the ZQF basically comes from what I have basically shared. I'll just take you a step back. I did show you that the appropriate authorities here include training institutions and professional bodies. So that basically has been an issue of contention, in that really before one becomes a professional, they have to go through a training program. And the role that the training institutions, the professional bodies are playing insofar as quality assurance is concerned has basically shown that there are some gaps in assuring quality to the expected standards, whereas an institution like the Higher Education Authority would be expected. The emergence of the appropriate authorities, basically looking at professional bodies, was a gap that existed. You know, any education system, if there's a gap that exists, those that want to be comfortable with the quality that is coming out from the education system will now give themselves more responsibilities. So you found that professional bodies were now regulating education and training. And not working with education and training providers to do this. So basically, that's one of the aspects why the ZQF is being reviewed. And this is the last point that I've gone to, which is really the review of the recognition of appropriate authorities and to streamline the quality assurance in education and training, because we've seen that even if the standard has been given, the fact that you have too many people responsible for quality assurance in itself compromises quality. The levels of quality assurance at the higher level should really be left with those responsible for education and training. But overall, the thrust of us reviewing the ZQF has been to respond to the changing training and education demands in the country and ensuring that our qualifications are internationally comparable. One of the things that we faced at Zambia is that we have a schooling system that goes up to O level, and O level is the entry into our universities. But the universities at first year are basically supposed to teach, and they do teach advanced level certificate material. However, the way the education system is that when they finish the first year, then they go into their specialization. The advanced level certification is not recognized. So we do have advanced level material being taught, but recognition is actually not being given. So basically, the country sat down to appreciate that any qualification that basically exists in the international landscape and is operating in Zambia. Of course, we do have some institutions that offer A level, but the overarching body structure, which is the ZQF, has not provided for the A level certificate. And so looking at what is happening internationally and recognizing that our 12th grade at schooling, which is O level, has now got A-level content in there. So initially, the fixing that the different players were doing was to add content. So we're adding content at secondary education and adding content at university that is equivalent to advanced level education without recognizing the certification or the competences that one gained. And so because of that, we have in effect shortchanged our citizens. They are capable, but the recognition, because we've not awarded a certificate to confirm that, has not happened. And so that was one of the motivating issues for us to relook the qualifications that are currently catered on the ZQF. And these are the discussions that are currently going on to facilitate for advanced level qualifications, same as bachelor honors degrees, because the way the recognition was done was basically based on award, what somebody was awarded. And so there's been that discussion that is going on with respect to reviewing the ZQF. Another aspect is the implementation of a credit accumulation and transfer system. This is basically, as Zambia, we use the one credit equivalent to 10 notional hours. But then in terms of translation and when we want for mobility purposes, we are increasingly seeing that when you use notional hours independently without much reference to the credits, when you are talking of issues of mobility and so on, the award owners get affected because they have to refer back. Whereas if it is an established system that is working, then that is basically something that is well appreciated. And so this review is to also bring into account and to also reflect the credit hours. And with the review currently where we are at is, this is the proposal. Cabinet approved in principle, but it's still under consultation. So what I'm showing you is still work in progress, almost there, but with a lot of discussions. One, you will see definitely that the structure has changed, because the earlier one, we were having misconceptions that everybody thought once you get to level 2B, which was our ordinary level, that you couldn't go into university. I'll just quickly show you the current structure and just explain that a little bit more. Yeah, so when you get to this, the O-level secondary education, others, when you just look at it here, unless you provided progression paths, one would just think that you can only go to a level 3 under the trades and occupations incrementally. So we had a bit of challenge explaining all that. So it was just felt that through stakeholder consultations, that the structure also needed to change. And this is basically what we are currently looking at. We've taken provision for the primary and secondary education there. We've taken recognition of, we had skill awards. These are people that are competent in a number of skill areas, but because our framework did not make, even though the Act made provision for partial qualifications, we actually did not operationalize that. So we're finding that people were getting shortchanged, those that were doing shorter period or shorter duration skill or occupational certifications. So that has been taken care of. And we have the diplomas, and the other key one to look at is the graduate certificates, the graduate diplomas, and the honors diplomas there. So basically, that's the way that we foresee this to be looking like. Still 10 levels. However, the main change here, you'll recall that I did indicate that we had the quality assurance that covered training institutions, professional bodies, and anyone that had an act. But now the quality assurance, basically recognition will be placed in the Ministry of General Education, the relevant authorities there for TVETA and higher education. So this basically is to streamline the role of quality assurance, and also just to focus the professional bodies to do that which they do better, which is to manage the professional practice and not the training itself. One of the things that we've been working on as the ZQF to ensure comparability and also mobility, and in line with what is going on within our region, we started the alignment of the ZQF to the SADC ZQF. We had reached an advanced stage, but the process has been held pending review of the ZQF. I must indicate that the transition period for implementation of the ZQF is until 2021 January, end of January. So the uptake of reviewed qualifications actually took longer because there's been a lot of capacity building and so on. Even though learning programs, some more learning programs have been accredited under the Higher Education Authority, we tended to find that those now making a progression to the ZQF, the National Qualifications Framework, took a little bit longer. And basically, at the moment, we do have about 106 registered qualifications, and more learning programs, but that is really the business of the quality assurance bodies that are responsible for the particular sub-frameworks before they can bring them to the ZQF. We see that this list will increase definitely by the end of December, because we are already in the pipeline and approving quite a lot of qualifications in readiness for the final launch of the end of the transition period. It was a 3-year period in which training institutions, awarding bodies had to align their qualifications and ensure consistency with the qualifications framework. Another development that I just wanted to share briefly with you is the Qualifications Management Information System and the e-certificate that we launched in June 2020. All our services are offered via this system. Of course, it has a few glitches here and there, but we're glad that we were able to launch it, and we've processed a few qualifications through this platform. That is mainly for the validation and evaluation service. We can do your applications, you can do your submission of learner records as an awarding body once you are recognized and given the rights. So this is something that you can actually see, log in, set your account, regardless of who you are on the system, and engage with the system. I will share basically how this system integrates. Basically talks to the quality assurance bodies and those that appropriate authorities that are quality assurance for them to submit the qualifications for registration on the ZQF, the appropriate authorities for them to give us who the qualification orders, and basically our staff will process the information. You can also make your bank transfers and payments online. A qualification holder can submit their qualification for verification and accreditation online, and all that will happen. And we are glad that this happened when we were at the peak of the COVID. So a number of qualification applications came through that. And on the screen right now, I'm sharing with you an e-certificate validation of qualification that basically shows you how this comes out. This qualification is issued, this certificate is issued after we have successfully confirmed that your qualification is authentic. This is for verification purposes. It is real time, and you can see that our colleague Previsil developed this for us. Thanks to Previsil, I think Stephen Logan is in here, but this is thanks to the initiative through the SADC Qualifications TCCA, the Technical Committee on Certification and Accreditation. We have a project, and we are now issuing these qualifications. They're real time, they have security features embedded in there, and if for any forgeries or anything, an employer or any user has the access to print this certificate and will be able to know whether indeed a person who has come for verification has also faked the recognition certificate. So basically what this assures, it assures you that what you have is a real verification certificate. The role that we play in recognition of prior learning, just to share, is that we develop the policy and criteria for recognition of prior learning, and this is given to the appropriate authorities. As the Qualifications Authority, we also offer implementation support, but the implementation of recognition of prior learning is effected at training delivery level. The other aspect to share with you is national occupational standards. So I'm basically touching a few issues that we do to inform the qualifications framework. We commenced development of national occupational standards. Basically, this is used in the development of curriculum and learning programs. We had an issue which continues, that the outcomes of our education system do not match the desires of industry. So the occupational standards basically inform what industry is looking for. So these will ensure that curricula and learning programs are tailored to the aspirations of key stakeholders, mainly industry who use the outcomes of the education sector. So to date, we've developed 12 occupational standards, and we hope to launch probably another 18 before the end of the year. So we've looked at the tourism sector, aquaculture, and agriculture. This is a development phase. It's a very expensive exercise, but we've started, and we hope. And the whole idea is that as training providers, awarding bodies are now bringing qualifications for recognition, the main input to ensure currency of what we are training will be derived from the occupational standards. So this is an initiative that we've been doing. I've spoken about the credit accumulation and transfer system, basically to ease local, regional, and international mobility in the education and training system. One intervention that we also have done as ZACO, we're proud of to have been the first African country to pilot this initiative, which is the Unesco Qualifications Passport. This is basically in line with the provisions in the revised Addis Ababa Convention and the Global Convention on the Recognition of Qualifications that basically deals with the practical application of the provisions for refugees and displaced persons. Basically what this does is you are able to assess an individual who does not have paper documentation to confirm whether what they have is authentic. And so this pilot project was initiated and conducted last year in 2019 in one of our refugee resettlements, Mehera. We had 61 applications, most of who came from DRC. Where the official language is French. So this gave us a bit of a challenge because my staff don't speak French. Currently now they are even being capacity built in French, but working with Unesco and Norway, NOKUT, we were able to issue 11 passports. And a lot of interlinkages and collaborations are happening. But what we've seen is that it is actually practical to award somebody without paper documentation or with paper documentation that you are not able to actually confirm directly from the awarding body. So this is the UQP project, basically taking the lessons from the European qualifications passport. And the impact of COVID, last but not the least, this basically hit us all very negatively. Negative as slow or non-responsive, responses to verification requests, both locally and internationally, as institutions closed and suspended. We had to suspend activities until we started gaining ground. We saw that in the education sector here in Zambia from March to September, we basically had shut down. Even though e-learning was promoted, but this was something new, and we saw that a lot of schools had to learn. So all exit qualifications have been held. Examination classes resumed in June, but the non-examination classes only resumed in September. Obviously, there's an impact. How do we recognize qualifications that half the year you did not actually have learning going on? And so the government of Zambia has extended the learning period to next year. So the term ends next year, but basically what future considerations we are looking at is to make alternative learning and assessment methods a part and parcel of our lives, such that as a qualifications authority, also to look at how then we recognize these qualifications that are impacted by issues that are beyond us. And so therefore it means that we need to look at innovative approaches of achieving learning outcomes. This is an ongoing discussion, and hopefully in the future we will be able to share how this has panned out. So my colleagues, this is where I end. This is the Zambia Qualifications Authority. I will just update this to give the link to our website, but we are available online and we'll answer any questions at the end. as we continue to share. With that, Eduarda, I end my presentation. Thank you so much.